Yeah, go ahead and have a seat. We're going to be starting out our journey through the book of Ecclesiastes today. We're going to be reading the entire first chapter, all for the sermon today. So if you got a Bible, if you got a phone, open up to Ecclesiastes chapter 1. And if you don't know, open up to the middle of the Bible and probably go to the right a little bit or maybe to the left a little bit, and they'll be all right around there. So open up to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, and what he's going to do in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, he's going to do what I did in 8th grade. Now, in Mount Carmel, in 8th grade, we did the science fair. Do you guys have a science fair here in Albion? You know, everybody, all the kids do an experiment or whatever, and then they present it on their cardboard table, and they put it out in the gym, and everybody walks around and listens to the experiment that happened, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? Now, here's what we do with the... science fair. We pick an experiment. Everybody, there's a pretzel right there. I'm calling dibs on that one. We do an experiment, and then we present the results. That's what we do. And we have to follow the scientific method. Now, there's many more steps or minor steps, but here are the rough main points of the scientific method that we would follow for our experiment. And I'm going to tell you about my 8th grade science fair. Me and Kyle Wood decided to do it together. And first off, you make an observation, right? This is the very first step. And so our observation was batteries die, and some die faster than other ones. And even worse, batteries are expensive. So those are our observations. Batteries die, some last longer, we don't know which, and they're expensive. And so then that leads us, our observations, they lead us into a question. And our question was, which battery lasts the longest, or which battery should I buy? Which battery lasts the longest, which battery is the best? And then, after this, you can't just jump right into this test. Then you have a hypothesis. This is what you think will happen, and this is where a lot of the research comes in. So we did a lot of Googling and a lot of reading. By a lot, I mean we looked about 2 pages, Wikipedia and then some other page, and we decided because of we formed a hypothesis based off our observation, based off our question, and based off of our research that Rayovac would be the best battery. Now, a lot of people think, oh, it's Duracell or it's Energizer. No, Rayovac, that's the brand to go with. That's our hypothesis. Our hypothesis is that Rayovac will hold the longest charge for the longest amount of time. And then you can get into the experiment. Then you can get into actually testing that hypothesis, that theory that you have. And what we did is we had this little light bulb that had, a closed circuit on it and had a little switch. And what we would do is take a little AA battery, put it in this, the little setup you had, and then flip the switch and leave it on there for 15 minutes. And then at 15 minutes exactly, flip the switch over, record our results, test how what the charge is before, test the charge after, and record it down, and do that with many batteries from many brands. And then after the experiment, you present the results. Now this is in the gym, and you're saying, hey, you want to come look at this? I got a lot of pretty colors. Rayovac's better than the rest of them. And turns out Rayovac is the best. That's the one you should buy. So that's the only brand of batteries I buy now. So in case you're curious, buy Rayovac. And that's the sermon. We can go home now. Okay, no. And so this is what Solomon is going to do, okay? He's going to take this scientific method and he's going to apply it to something. And he's going to apply it to what's going on in the world. Now, I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, but here's a little bit of a disclaimer. If you struggle with depression, just tune me out for about 20 minutes, and then during the conclusion, we'll get back to you and we'll be good, okay? Everybody good there? So Ecclesiastes, he's going to conduct this science fair experiment, and he kind of presents it how you would at a science fair, because at the science fair you say, hey, what was your experiment? He said, oh, well, I found out that Rayovac batteries are the best. And so I start with the results, and then I kind of work backwards. And because the experiment phase is so long, and it's the longest step, he's going to save that for chapters 2 and 3 and a lot of the rest of the book. And he's going to save that. So we're not going to get into the experiment section. That's going to be next week and the week after and a lot of time after that as well. And we're going to be in Ecclesiastes for about 12 weeks, give or take a week or two, depending on how we feel about it, depending on what happens. But experiments for later. But for now, we're just going to look at these 4 steps. And we're going to go in order and try and follow Solomon along his journey, along his path, as he concludes his experiment. We're going to follow this from the observation all the way down to the results. So here's what happens. He's going to first of all start off with this. He's going to give us a little introduction to what's going on. Because, at the science fair, whenever you're standing in front of your cardboard box and it's got all the colors on it, they come up and they say, hey, what's your name? And you say, I'm Clayton Richison, this is Kyle Wood, and here's what's going on. And so he says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king of Jerusalem. And now, there's a little bit of dispute on who wrote this, but we know that whoever wrote this, that the test that's happening, the science fair project was conducted by this guy, which is the king in Jerusalem, and who's the son of David. Anybody got an idea who that is? Solomon. That's a good guess. Really good. Appreciate it, guys. And then later on, he says, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. So this is Solomon's experiments. Now, whenever we're going to get into this a little bit later, remember, Solomon's the really wise guy, and Solomon's the really rich guy, and Solomon's the really wealthy guy. Solomon's the guy who's got everything. He's the king, he's got money, he's got women, he's got it all. He's got anything that he wants at his disposal, and he's going to say, I'm going to conduct this experiment. And later on, we're going to see, I'm going to devote myself, I'm going to set my heart on this, and he's not going to hold anything back on this. So here's where we start out. We're going to get into the observations. Here's what Solomon views in this world, and there's a couple things. He's going to get into this, but this is us standing and saying, hey, batteries die. Batteries are expensive. That's a problem. This is Solomon saying, here's what I see. Here's what's going on in the world. Here's what I observe to be happening in this life. And this is maybe not a good thing. And here's the first thing that he observes. The very first thing is that nothing changes. He looks at life, he looks at what's going on in this world, and he says, it's the same yesterday, it's the same today, and it's going to be the same tomorrow. Now, there's no change in what's going on. It might have the illusion of motion, it might look like there's something happening, but nothing changes. Nothing productive happens. It's just over and over and over again. This life has no change in it. And he's going to look at a few different things. He's going to look at humanity. He's going to look at the wind. He's going to look at water. And he's going to look at one more thing, the sun. And so here's it is, verse 4. A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. He says, look, humanity, Solomon goes, like, I'm a human, so I'm going to look at humans first. What happens with humans? They die. What happens with humans? They are born, they grow old, they die. That's what happens. He says, that has been the way it's been forever. For as long as there have been humans, and for as long as there will be humans, people are born and people die. People are born, people die, over and over and over again. And it's the illusion of motion, it's the illusion of change, because there's different people, but it's just, they're coming and going. It's just again and again and again and again and again. Over and over again, it looks like there's forward progress, but there's nothing. People come, people die. People are born, people die. It doesn't change for millennia, for thousands of years, or depending on how long, whatever your views are on the creation of the world, it doesn't matter. One thing we can look at is that humans, as they are humans, have always been born and have always died. I don't care if you believe in creation or the Big Bang, you can agree that people are born and people die. That's just how it is. That's how we are. That's how we are. It's just it. And he says, no matter what, you're born and you die over and over and over again. And he says, the earth remains forever. And for millennia, we have been doing things and we've been building stuff, and then nothing happens. Nothing changes. Because, the Great Pyramids of Egypt, I'm fascinated by those. I love the Great Pyramids of Egypt. I could read about those all day long, watch every documentary. I'm fascinated by those. But those are, no matter how huge they are, how massive and how long, 4,500 years, by the way, have been around, they're one bad earthquake from being nothing. I mean, there's nothing to it. We've got earthquake-proof stuff, and we've got hurricane-proof, and we've got tornado-proof. Let me tell you, you're one bad natural disaster from being nothing. This building that's been around for 100 years, one bad earthquake, one bad tornado, one bad something, and it's gone. And that's just the way it is. He says humans, since the beginning of time, have been trying to change things, and in an instant, it can just be nothing. It's like little ants crawling around on a rock. They crawl and they crawl and they crawl, but what do they do to the rock? Nothing. They're just crawling on it. They don't change the rock. There's no change in this life. He says humans come, humans go, and they might look like they're doing something. They might look like they're changing. They might look like they're building or digging or doing whatever, but all in all, there's no change. There's nothing to it. Humans have the illusion of changing, but they're still humans going in circles, dying and being born forever. And it's been that way, and that's how it is now, and that's how it's going to be tomorrow. That's just what it is. And now next, what he's going to do in the next few verses, he's going to use a couple illustrations, and he's going to apply how humans are on the earth to the sun and to the wind and to the water. So here's verse 5. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and then it hastens to the place where it rises. He says, every morning, which way is east? That way's east. That way's east. I'm crooked. Over there is east, over there is west, and the sun's going to come up over there, the sun's going to go down over there. Every day. Every single day that you live on this earth, sun's going to rise over there, sun's going to set over there. It might go a little bit this way, that way, north and south, but every single time, no matter what, sun's around over there in the morning, bright and early, about 6:30 today, and it's going to set over there about 5:30 or 6 o'clock tonight. Every single day, that's what it's going to be. And that's how it's been since the beginning, and that's how it will be until the end. There's no change. It's over and over and over again. Sun rises, sun sets. Sun rises, sun sets. Humans are born, humans die. Sun rises, sun sets, humans die, over and over. Every single. Another neat thing about Egypt is they bury their dead in the west. And there's a euphemism that they say whenever, a lot of times we say when people die, we say, oh, they passed away. The Egyptians would say, oh, they went west. They went to where the sun dies. But you know what the sun does whenever it dies? Turns around, comes back up in the east. And it's born again. And every single day, it rises, hurries across the sky. And there's, the Greek mythology that there's a guy pulling the sun across the sky by a chariot. And he's just trying to get to the end. But then what does he find? Back around to the beginning. And that word hastens, it's this idea of a runner running a race. You guys got a track that you run around. Anybody ran around a track? I am not a fan. I did track for 1 year, 8th grade year, and they made me run the 800, which is the worst. It's 2 laps. It's not long enough to jog, and it's not short enough to sprint, so you're just in a painful, awkward position in the middle. It's awful. But it'd be like running around the track, and all I got to do is get to that point again, and then you get there and go, no, you got another lap. All right, so you go again, and you get there, and you go, no, you got another lap. No, go again. Oh, not another lap. Another lap. Over and over and over again. The sun just keeps going and going and going. Humans just keep coming and going and coming and going, and there's no change in this life. Humans come, humans go. The sun comes, the sun goes. There's no change. It doesn't have any difference from yesterday, today, or tomorrow. It's all the same. And then he applies us to what happens here, verse 6, the wind. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind. And on its circuits, the wind returns. He says, look, the wind, it causes a lot of commotion. It's breezy. I can feel it. I can't maybe see it, but it causes a lot of motion. I see the leaves moving, and then it goes, and it looks like it's doing something. It looks like it's changing every day, but really it's just on a big circuit. It's just going around and around and around and around and around, over and over and over again, just like the sun, just like humans. The wind comes and the wind goes. The wind blows and the wind doesn't blow. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And there's no change. It just keeps going no matter what. It's a nice image of the sun and the wind. They look like they're doing something, but it's just in a big circle. Just going over and over and over again. And here's the last illustration he does. He says, humans, we're coming and going. We don't change anything. The sun comes and goes. It doesn't change anything. The wind comes and goes. And it doesn't change anything. And then the last one, all streams run into the sea. But the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. He says, look, all the streams go into the ocean, but does the ocean get full? No. Now, I went to Canada on a fishing trip, and there's a really neat sign that we passed when we got into Canada at some point. I mean, we're a few hours into Canada, and we passed a sign that says, from here on north, all streams flow into the Arctic Ocean. That's pretty neat. That's a little bit of a change. But you know where the ocean, you know where that water's going no matter what? Back to the ocean. And it might go in a different direction, but it's going to the ocean. And these guys, they're looking at this saying, hey, look, water keeps flowing into this spot, and it never gets full. Now, anybody overfilled a glass before? My waitress friend over here, you ever overfilled a glass? Oh, lucky you. But you guys, when you take a pitcher and you pour water into a cup, the cup gets full, and you stop filling, right? They look at this, and they see, look, this stream, it's going into this ocean. It's going into this bowl here, and it never gets full. And they've got this Dead Sea there, right? The Jordan River flows into the Dead Sea, and the Dead Sea has no outlet. There's no water that gets out of the Jordan Sea. And year after year, decade after decade, century and millennia, over and over again, they watch as water pours into this bowl, and it never gets full. And it defies their logic. And it's just continuous motion with no effect, no change, no difference made. And they say that is what humans are like. We make no difference. We make no change on this life. We are just like this water that keeps flowing in over and over, and there's no difference. And here's the next verse, verse 8. All things are full of weariness that a man cannot utter. And he says, this is so painful to look at, to see how hard we work, to see how hard we try, and that there's no change. It is so wearisome that we cannot describe it in words. We can say, oh, how wearisome, but we cannot fully grasp how wearisome this is, how much effort we put into this to make no change. For hundreds or for decades or hundreds of years, whatever, how long it was, they built the pyramids, and they're beautiful, and they're great, and they're grand. But again, in an instant, they're gone. And there's no change. However much time we spend on these great skyscrapers and on the infrastructure of the cities and the underground, and it's all amazing, it doesn't matter. He says there's no change. How much effort you put in a moment, it can be gone. There's no change on this earth. You make no change here on this earth, and it is so full of weariness. And now, I mowed my family's yard whenever I still lived at home. And we got a nice Skag mower. The church, Parkview, had a nice mower that they let us use. But every now and then it rains, right? And every now and then the ground gets a little muddy. And there's a couple spots in my yard that are a little lower in elevation than the other spots, and they collect a little bit more water. Now, if I go out to mow, and this has happened more times than I'd like to admit, where I start mowing and I get a little too close to that muddy area. And you know what happens is that big back tire starts spinning in there, and spinning and spinning and spinning, and I'm sitting right there, and I'm just spitting mud out the back, and there's no movement going on. You know what Solomon says? That's what life is. You're moving it a lot, you're doing a lot of effort, you're putting a lot of energy in this, but you're not moving anywhere, you're not moving anything. You don't make any change, you don't make any difference on this earth. Nothing changes. And he illustrates it as this. The eye is not satisfied with seeing. You can never see enough to say, you know what, I've seen it all, I'm happy. I can just close my eyes and never see anything again. And no ear is filled with hearing. You can never hear so much that you go, you know what, I'm good. I don't need to hear anything else. He says you can never have enough. You can never do enough. There's no change. Over and over and over again in this life, nothing changes. No matter how much effort, no matter how much you do, no matter how much you see, how much you do, how much you hear, there is no change. So that's the first observation that Solomon sees in his scientific process. He looks around, looks in the world, and goes, there's nothing changing. We are just like the sun and the wind and the waters and the tire stuck in the mud. We're moving, but there's no change. And then he also observes this. Nothing is new. Nothing changes, but on top of that, nothing is new. No matter how much effort we put into it, how much we do, nothing is made new. Nothing begins something new. He says, you are just a creation, so you cannot be a creator. There is nothing that you can do to make something new. There's nothing that you can do to make something new. Here's verse 9. What has been is what will be. He says if it's already been in the past, it's going to be again. And what has been done is what will be done. And there's nothing new under the sun. He says if it exists, it has already existed. Now I know what you're thinking. I've got this black box in my pocket. I've got this cell phone that allows me to call my friend across the country. You know what that is? That's a means of communication. That's what we've been doing since humans existed. And it's the same. It may be a little bit of change in the means to get to the same end goal, but it's the same end goal. I want to talk with you, so I'm going to talk with you doing this seemingly different thing, the seemingly new thing, but it's the same. He says there's nothing new under the sun. It's all the same. And then here's Ecclesiastes 1:10, the next verse. Is there a thing of which it is said? He saw your rhetorical question coming about the cell phones. He knew what you were going to ask. And he says, is there a thing that it can be said, hey, look, this is new. It has been already in the ages before. If you think that there's something new, you're wrong. It's already been. Now, I know what you're thinking now. We got this thing called the Large Hadron Collider over on this border of France and these other countries, and it's this huge thing. It's miles long, and it's run by this company called CERN, and they claim that they can make a black hole, and they make all these new elements, and it's crazy. And if you look at the periodic table, down in the bottom on the heaviest ones, there's like a good 3 or 4 or 5 in a row that are unobtainium and unobtainium and anemonium, and they're all made by the same guy who named them after himself. You know what those are? Those are new elements, but you know what those are made of? Electrons and protons that have already been. He says, if you want to get really down to the science and nitty-gritty of it, everything that exists right now has existed forever. It's existed since the beginning. There's nothing new. You can't make anything new. Even if you think it's new, it's not new. It's already been, and it will be again, and it will be forgotten. And here's the next verse, verse 11. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. He says, nobody's going to remember you anyway. If you think you've made something new, give it a couple thousand years. They'll forget you. Now, my grandpa, yesterday, he's in town visiting my family because he turned 91 yesterday. And so we ate fried chicken and took a nap. It was a good time. Now, my grandpa's name is Charles Ray. His father's name was my grandpa's name is Charles Royce. His father's name was Chestel Ray, and his father's name was William Halleck. Can anybody go that far back on one of your family trees? How about farther than that? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 generations ago? Can you go back to, 1,000? I mean, we know a lot. We can remember a lot. But there comes a point where you don't know your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather's name. I mean, he could have been a great man. He could have been a terrible man. We have no idea. But he says, look, we've forgotten him. And even forgetting isn't new. You've already done that. People have already been doing that forever. There's nothing new in this life. No matter your effort, no matter what you do, it's the same. Now, I like chicken. Anybody else like chicken? Now, I like to grill chicken. Anybody else like to grill chicken? I like to fry chicken. Anybody else like to fry chicken? Now, no matter which way you cook it, no matter how you season chicken, it's chicken. All right? No matter what you do to the piece of chicken, it's still just chicken. He says, no matter what you do in this life, it might look new, it might be a little bit different, might have a little different flair than what we had before, but you know what it is? It's still chicken. It's still the same. Nothing is new. Nothing changes, nothing is new. These are the observations that Solomon has in this life. Nothing changes, nothing is new, and so now he comes to the question he must ask. He looks at this and he goes, what should I do about this? And he asks a question. And if you're curious what the question is, it's the title of this sermon. What's the point? If I can't change anything, if I can't make anything new, if nobody's going to remember me, if I don't remember people before me, what's the point? Is life worth living? Why do I exist? Why am I here? And whenever Kyle and I are presenting our science fair project, we look at this and we say, hey, look, batteries die. Hey, look, batteries are expensive. Which one's the best? Solomon says, hey, look, nothing changes, nothing is new, so what's the point? Here's the deal, verse 3 rather. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? Look, we're doing a lot of stuff, but we're not changing anything, we're not making anything new. What do I gain? What's the point? Is life worth living? Why am I here? And he questions his own existence. Now, if you're familiar with anything in philosophy at all, there are three big questions that philosophy and different religions and mindsets and thought processes strive to answer. One of them is, where did I come from and where am I going? Now, with Solomon's observations, did you see those? I don't change anything. I don't make anything new. Everybody before me has died. Everybody after me is going to die. I'm going to die too. I came from nothing. I was nothing before, and I'm going to go back and die, and nobody's going to remember me. If I answer that question with, where did I come from, and where am I going with nowhere to nowhere, then the third question is not, it stems from, where do I come from, and where am I going, and why am I here? And that's the question that he struggles with. He says, I'm looking. I'm seeing generation come and go. I'm seeing everything go on. I'm seeing this tireless effort with no change. What's the point of my existence? Why am I here? Why am I alive? He says, I don't make any difference. I don't make any change. There's nothing that anybody can do to do anything different. So why do I exist? Why am I here on this rock? Why do I exist? What is the meaning of life? What's the point? So there's the observations. Nothing is new, nothing changes. That's the question, what's the point? Why am I here? Why do I exist? Is there a meaning to my life? And then he gets into his hypothesis. Here's what he thinks is going to happen. Here's his prediction on what is going to go on. And you know what the hypothesis is? Not good. Because if you got the observations of I don't change anything, I don't do anything, and you're asking the question, what's my existence for? Why do I exist? The answer is not good. The hypothesis, what he thinks will happen, it does not sound good. Here's verse 13 and then verse 16. And we already looked at verse 12. He says, I'm the preacher. I'm king over Israel. I'm king in Jerusalem. I applied my heart to seek and to search. I'm going to take all of my effort, all of my money, all of my time, all of my resources as king over Israel, and I'm going to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. And what does he say about it? It's an unhappy business. I don't like doing this. God has given it to me, to the children of man, to be busy with. And then verse 16, I said in my heart, I've acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. You know what he's saying right there? He's recalling back that story. You know what I'm talking about? Where God says, hey, Solomon, I will give you one wish. You want power? You got it. You want money? You got it. You want women? You got it. What do you wish for? And Solomon thinks, and he says, I think I'll take wisdom, God. And God says, you know what, that's a good request. So I'm going to give you the wisdom, and I'm going to give you everything else on top of that. And he grants him kingship, and he grants him power, and he grants him money. Because Solomon was a wise man and asked for more wisdom, Solomon is going to apply all of that wisdom, that power, and that godly nature. And he's going to apply that to life and try and search out what's the point. And here's the hypothesis. Here's what he thinks will happen. Verse 14, I've seen everything that is done under the sun. Behold, it's vanity, striving after the wind. Now that word vanity, it's got a couple different phrases that we can translate it as. It is the most used phrase in this book of the Bible, rather than, the and some articles. This is the most common word, and it's used more in Ecclesiastes than it is in the rest of the Bible. Vanity, vanity. He says, look, I've looked at everything. My hypothesis is that it's all vanity, and it's all meaningless. It's vapor. You guys ever seen the people vaping? You got the things and the big clouds? But then what does it do? It dissipates, and it's gone right then, right that second, and it's no more. He says, that's all it is. It looks like it could do something, but you can't grasp it, you can't get to it, and it's gone. And he says, it's striving after the wind. And I heard a neat phrase, a neat quote about this. He says, striving after the wind. He says, you can never catch it. But even if you do catch it, you don't have anything to begin with. You can't get there. It's nothing. There's no point to it. Now, Violet this past summer, she came home and we had a good time and we caught fireflies in a mason jar, poked holes in the top and tried to keep them alive. But have you ever tried catching fireflies when there are no fireflies? Now try and do that, but instead with fireflies, with the wind. Just trying to bottle wind and screw it on and hold it and keep it on your bedside table so that when you wake up in the morning you can unscrew it and it'll blast you with a blast. That's not how it happens. Try and catch the wind. Seriously, go out there, try and catch a wind in a mason jar, and you will find that you can't do it. And even if you do it, it's nothing anyway. It's nothing. There's nothing there. And his hypothesis is, no matter how hard you try, it's vanity. It's striving after the wind. No matter what you come to in a conclusion, his hypothesis, his prediction as to what the answer to his question will be, remember the question, what's my point in life? What he thinks is going to be the answer is nothing. It's vanity. It's meaningless. That word vanity means meaningless. There's nothing to it. There's just nothing there. And his hypothesis is, again, based off of his observations. Now we're going to read the rest of this little section here in Ecclesiastes 1, the second half. And here's what he says in verse 15. What is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be counted. He says, look, remember you can't change anything? Remember that thing? If this thing is crooked, you can't make it straight. We got rivers out here that flow and do whatever the heck they want because they're rivers and they don't have a mind of their own. You ever tried to change the direction of a river? There was an earthquake 100 years ago that changed the direction of the Mississippi for a little bit, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, or am I just making stuff up? All right, cool. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. So that's the river's going to do what they want. If it's crooked, it's going to be crooked. Good luck changing it. Yeah, you can dig your trenches, but one good storm and your trench is gone. You can't change it. It does whatever it wants. He says if it's crooked, it's staying that way. And even if you do try and fix it, well, you don't really have final say over that. Nature and this world has control over that. He says if it's crooked, it's staying that way. And if it's lacking, you can't count it. Now, you guys ever tried to drive somewhere before we had GPSs and you got the nice paper and ink map, but then somebody tears off a corner and you're trying to get up there to Chicago, but then Chicago's ripped off the map and you're going, well, I don't know where to go now. I'm pretty lost. You can't figure out where you are. You can't figure out where you're going. You can't count what is not there. And that's what he says. He says, nothing's new, nothing's changed. You can't do anything about it. You cannot do anything about it. And then here's the next one, verse 17. And I applied my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness, and to know folly. And I perceived that also it's striving after the wind. And that's a weird little phrase there. I've applied my heart to know wisdom and madness and folly. What he's saying there is I'm gonna run with the high crowd. I'm gonna go the high road, and I'm gonna go be with the wealthy people. I'm gonna go play polo, sip on some bourbon, have a good time, and we're gonna hang out with the wealthiest of the wealthy, and I'm gonna figure it out. And he says, no, that's just striving after win. So he says, okay, if the wealthy didn't work, I'm gonna go hang out at NASCAR, drink some Natty Light, go have a nice time, go be with my good old boys and the big bellies, and see if that works. And he says, Nope, that's just striving after the wind. What he's going to do, he's saying, hey, I'm going to go test this from every angle, every possible direction. If there's a way to look at this life, I'm going to go try that mindset. I'm going to go try that philosophy and see what it's like. And what does he think is going to happen? That it's just striving after the wind. Just trying to catch the wind with your bare hand or with a mason jar, and it's not going to happen. He's just striving and trying, and all human experience is meaningless. It's the same as chasing after the wind with a mason jar, trying to capture it. Here's verse 18. For in much wisdom is much vexation, is much confusion. I don't understand what's going on. And he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. He says, look, I'm going to do all this, I'm going to try all this, but in the end, I'm not going to get anywhere productive. I'm not going to get to the place where I need to get to because it's all meaningless. It's all vanity. It's all chasing after the wind. That is his hypothesis on what's going to happen. And now let's get into the result. Now let's see what his final results are, because we can't go to the experiment yet because there's way too much of that to get today. So here's the result, and the results are pretty bleak, and the results are found in verse 2. Again, this is the science fair. This is Solomon sitting in front of his cardboard box with all the colors on it. He's going to say, hey, look, I'm the smart guy. I've got a lot of money. I got a lot of wisdom. I got a lot of power. I'm going to apply myself in every different direction and try and figure this out. And you know what my results are? Vanity of vanity, says the preacher. Vanity of vanity, all is vanity. It's pointless. It's meaningless. There is no point to this life. He says, what's the point of life? None. Got nothing. There's no point to it. It's vanity. And that word, again, vanity could mean meaningless. But meaningless is harder to say in that sentence because it'd be meaninglessnesses of all meaninglessnesses, says the preacher. Meaninglessness of all meaninglessnesses. All is meaningless. It's too many meaninglessnesses. You can't get there. But it's the same idea. There's not this life, no matter what angle you look at it, if you're just looking at this life, no matter if you're a Christian, no matter if you're a Muslim, no matter if you're a Jew, no matter if you're an atheist, he says if you're just looking at this life, it's all meaningless. It's vanity. There's no point to this life. And he calls back to Genesis chapter 3 at the fall. Adam and Eve, they sin, and God curses Adam and Eve. And here's what God says to Adam and Eve. By the sweat of your brow, you will eat the bread, you will return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you were taken from dust, and to dust you will return. From dust to dust, that's your point. You want to know what your meaning is in life? To go from dust to dust. Solomon has found out, he's applied himself, and he's figured out the meaning of life is to go back to the grave. That's the meaning. He says, no matter what you do in this life, no matter how you look at life, you're going back to the grave. That's the point. That's the point of life. Now here's the one contingent. Here's the one variable that he has left out. And it's repeated over and over in there. And I don't have it up on the screen, but you can look through that passage and read chapter 1 again. And 2 times he will say, under heaven. And 1 time, or maybe 2 times it's under the sun, and 1 time it's under heaven. He says, if we are limiting our view to this life, if we are forgetting God, then everything is meaningless. He says, if you have cut out the creator of the universe, then no matter what else is in this life, no matter how you view it, if you reject God, everything is meaningless. Now, if you guys want to come up and play, his observation is simple. Nothing is new, nothing is changes. So he asks a question about that. What is my lot in life? What is my purpose? What is the point of my life? Is there a meaning? What is my purpose? And his hypothesis, there's probably not one. And then he goes through all the experiments that we'll look at next week, and he comes to this conclusion that if you reject God, if you forget God, then you've lost your meaning. No matter how you view life, if you do not look at life in the realm of God having created it all, this life is absolutely and utterly meaningless. And now here's the deal. If you do not agree with me, if you do not think that Solomon is right and that I am right, you go live a wayward life for a little while. You go reject God. Go do whatever you want. Go drink. Go do anything. Go look at whatever you want. Go anything you want and come back broke and divorced and poor and sad and depressed, and we'll have a chat about Jesus, okay? That's what Solomon says. He says if you just reject God, then you're going to come broke and poor, and you're going to be like the slave who rejected his father, said, give me my money, I'm going to go waste it away, and he's looking at eating the slop, and he's going, man, the slave's got it better than me. I have no point. There's no meaning in life. Why am I here? And the answer is none. The science fair exhibit is conducted without the truth of God in the mind. And if you conduct your science fair experiment, your life, without the truth of God, if you forget God, you'll have forgotten your meaning. God gives us our meaning, and if you reject Him, if you forget God, you forget your meaning. But we know that God reaches into this world, and he changes things, and he makes new things, and he created his Son new in a way that nobody could, and his Son creates new things, and he changes things the way that humans could not. And that is what we have hope in, not because us humans make any difference, but because God makes the difference. If you forget God, then you forget your meaning.